to the metal church.
Bloody Roots.
Reverend Ian Christie is about to begin. Please turn to page 666.
From the pages of Hound of the Beast, your weekly heavy metal history lesson with Ian Christie.
Greetings, I'm Ian Christe. Today we appeal to the ancient ones for roots of deep-rooted worldwide folk metal. Tracks by Skyclad, Mezocabal, Yomi, Primordial, Thonic, Zealand Ardor, tapping into the folk traditions of Turkey, Japan, Brazil, England, Ireland, Switzerland, China, and the American South. Starting here fresh from their most recent appearance at New York's Carnegie Hall, Mongolian folk metal greats, Tenger Cavalry. I'm Ian Christie. You're listening to Roots. Yes, amazing, epic drawn, derived, drenched metal by Mongolia's Tengar Cavalry here on Roots, your weekly metal history lesson. This is a fascinating show coming up, my friends. We're looking at a sampling of a deep movement traversing the globe in metal, I would say for at least 25 years now, but finally really reaching the fever pitch, the highest quality, the most natural, full integration of traditional, sometimes ancient folk traditions, storytelling, singing styles, instrumentation into full-blown, high-octane, blood-pumping metal music. I'm Ian Christie. I wrote the book Sound of the Beast, the complete headbanging history of heavy metal. Find out more about that and countless other volumes of the heavy metal tradition at bazillionpoints.com. Thank you. At the time that Sound of the Beast came out, it started to be able to say, well, you know, there are these Australian bands like Disembowelment who started a whole side project called Trial of the Bow, experimenting with traditional Australian instrumentation. There were Norwegian bands that started to bring in like folk music influences and start to tell the Viking tales, realizing what a rich tradition lay right under their footsteps. All these museums and statues came alive in the minds of metal fans. Now, folk songs themselves have appeared in hard rock and metal, going back to the earliest sounds of Black Sabbath, some of that early kind of early music English guitar that Tony Iommi picked up, or you could look at Thin Lizzy having their biggest hit ever with the traditional Irish song Whiskey in the Jar. By the high tides of metal in the 1980s, things tended to be more about reality in the case of the thrash bands, Satan in the case of the thrash and the early death metal bands, or castles and conquests in the hands of bands like Saxon or Iron Maiden. Towards the end of the 1980s, dawn of the 1990s, however, there was a move on the part of bands like Bathory embracing the Viking myths and putting in a little bit of more epic, extra metallic flair into songwriting with sounds that Vikings might have heard on their conquests. Same happened with the band Sepultura out of Brazil. Such a huge deal was made out of them coming from South America and basically becoming a name brand, household name, heavy metal sensation worldwide. They looked back to the music that had surrounded them growing up, the stuff that they rebelled against, you know, when they formed a metal band. They didn't want to hear about bossa nova and traditional, like, Indian rainforest music. But then they got a little older, a little more mature, realized the richness of all of that, started to put it into their music. Definitely, obviously, on the Roots album, but before that, even it was starting to surface. It's unavoidable. It's very appealing. You start to realize, oh, this is the ancient sound. This is what's gotten my generations through generation and generation of war and struggle and conquest and, despair and famine and being vanquished. All sorts of myths and ancient sounds mixed together in this folk music for heavy metal to come and figure out how to put it all together. It's really a huge explosion, and it's happening everywhere in 2018. Stuff to come by plenty of Europeans tapping into their ancient customs from Switzerland to Norway to across the Nordic lands. We have Asian representatives from Japan and Taiwan. A couple of other American examples, Chemicon out of Mexico, and whose music videos, by the way, make the Mel Gibson movie Apocalyptico look tame and PG-13 rated. And also the Brazilian band Arandu Aracua, who themselves go into that same rainforest that inspired Sepultura so long ago, and come back with a kind of music that really has 1 foot in the folk, 1 foot in the metal. This, to me, is the first band that dedicated itself entirely to folk metal sounds. It's England's Skyclad, formed by vocalist Martin Valkyr of Sabbath after he left Sabbath following an argument with that band's guitarist Andy Sneap, who joined Judas Priest in 2018. So let's do this. The band Skyclad out of Britain, a couple of American examples from Mexico's Chemicon and Brazil's Arandu Aracua, Japan's Yomi, a few minutes away, something from Switzerland, and Turkey's Mezar Karbal, a band also known as Pentagram, who decided to wisely not be the 15th pentagram on the map. One of the most truly deeply integrated combinations, tracing its heritage back through Istanbul all the way to the Eastern Roman Empire. I am Ian Christie. This is Roots, your weekly metal history lesson, and it's roots of ancient folk metal today as the old and the new combine in explosive metal alchemy only on SiriusXM.
Comedy and more. Please welcome your four hosts and one who shot the moon. Driven to the sun to glory, longing by the hand of one to me. I'm the liar of the evil one resides. I direct my soul on the truth from the wildlands of bullshit. I will test my point.
Yes, that's Switzerland's Eluveti, the call of the mountains, a call that's impossible to ignore if you hail from that seemingly small Central European nation, but of course surrounded by the most majestic, giant, alpine, mysterious, wondrous mountain ranges all around you. I'm Ian Christie. This is Roots of Deep-Rooted Worldwide Folk Metal. And just in the last few minutes, from Switzerland, we went to Japan, Brazil, Mexico, Turkey, Britain, and even Mongolia at the start of this hour, looking at the current conflagration of combinations of ancient folk customs and amp-ripping, head-banging heavy metal music. In its earliest states, I guess, heavy metal definitely what could be greasy kid stuff based on comic books and cheap horror movies, but there always was this attraction to the olden times, the days of Dracula or King Arthur, when the castles were standing strong and streaming with pennants. And really, today's show shows there's an even deeper pull now, learning more about the generations that came before the generations that came before the generations way before electric instruments that still have magnetic pull and meaning to the lives of all of us alive today. Talked about the earliest examples of bands using traditional folk instruments and melodies in their music. In the 1990s, it seemed to almost be a cliche in black metal that there would be some type of, Arabic black metal band would use Arabic sounds. Israeli would use Old Hebrew sounds. If it was a Japanese band, they would be standing in the forest with a samurai sword and maybe incorporating a couple of traditional plucked Japanese string instruments or something. Nowadays, it's much more than window dressing, much more than just another track layered over the basic metal underpinnings. It's really, truly integrated, unique fusion of music that's inspired by old, long, archaeological buried stuff and the world around us today. We still have Taiwan's Thonic, brand new music by that band from Battlefields of Asura, coming in a few minutes. Something by Primordial, who have always delved in the spiritual, tragic pull of their home country of Ireland. And something, the song today with the fewest distorted electric guitars, a band called Heilung out of Denmark, but representing Northern Europe and Scandinavia with songs and ritual music based on really straight from the caves, straight from what we know has been passed down from those ancient people that lived there in the pre-Roman times, all the way back to the Iron Age. And those guys on a metal record label playing metal festivals. And I do urge you to check them out video-wise. It's a completely unique band, Heilung, that we'll hear in about 5 minutes' time. This is straight out of Norway. Folk metal as performed by Isan of Emperor, one of the highest level metal prodigies that we've ever experienced in 50 years of metal music, putting his extremely killed metal chops to work here with a band called Harding Rock, who delve into the Norwegian folk traditions and stories taken straight out of those dark, spooky, ogre and troll-laden woods. I am Ian Christie. This is Roots of Deep-Rooted Worldwide Folk Metal, only on SiriusXM.
just leads to downfall.
But you only understand the language of the soul.
What if I want to tell you to leave me and my beloved ones in peace?
But you only understand the language of the soul.
Let the blade be the talker.
So my tongue shall become iron.
And words don't might you roar a war.
Revealing my divine anger's arrows shall strike
all action for the good of all.
I see my reflection in your eyes.
My new age has just begun.
Sword is soft.
The fire of the furnace.
It hungers to be hit
And wants to have 100
in the
sisters.
coldest state of their existence.
That's the maddest.
In the morris of the red rain,
Beloved brother, enemy.
I sing my soul song for you.
The lullaby of obliteration.
So I can wake up with a smile.
Bliss in my heart.
And bliss in my heart.
Bliss in my heart.
Coexistence, conflict, compact.
Infestation, regeneration, transformation.
That is the best I can do for you.
I see a great loom on the horizon.
Promises a powerful sun to rise.
No matter who.
It will make me a fire, some purification, purification.
Look like dying embers.
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 From the pages of Sound of the Beast, your weekly heavy metal history lesson with Ian Christie. Liquid Metal!
redemption. So I'll do what I have to do to see out the day. Blood and streams mixed with rain. Damn your love and damn your lies. And now I hang by my father's hand in the square where your first lands.
Thonic, a band very wrapped up in the political happenings between Taiwan and China. Of course, performing on Ozfest not that long ago, maybe a decade back, one of the very final installments of the Ozfest tour, and attracting tons and tons of American Taiwanese of all ages, supporting them for, being a touring Taiwanese band across the United States. And always their Taiwanese and Chinese identity very, very heavy and strong in the songwriting, as much as they are a modern symphonic black metal band. Thanks very much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed that primordial track, To Hell or the Hangman, from 5 or 6 minutes ago. Not a ton of traditional instrumentation or whatnot there, but I just had to get into the ultimate heaviness of a band that to me is steeped in the spiritual folk elements of their homeland, in their case, Ireland. Deep cuts, man. Mongolia, England, Turkey, Mexico, Japan, Brazil, Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, Ireland, Taiwan. These are all bands that have existed for 10, sometimes 20 years, and fusing together the traditions of sometimes hundreds of years, sometimes maybe even thousands of years together with current day tools and frameworks. Awesome stuff. This playlist is online at roots.bazillionpoints.com, and I hope that some of this material brought home to you that Filipino uncle that you have, or the grandparents who came over from Eastern Europe, or some distant tinkling connection wherever it was that your people rose out of the marshes and figured out how to make simple tools and construct a hut to not get rained on so much. I'm Ian Christie. I wrote Sound of the Beast, the complete headbanging history of heavy metal. Check out Sound of the Beast and other books like Metallion, the Slayer Mag Diaries, Mean Deviation, 4 decades of progressive heavy metal, Swedish death metal, and much, much more at bazillionpoints.com. It's our own folk tradition, having nothing to do with folk music, but the folk tradition of great metal music and heritage. There's one glaring country missing from today's show. It's the United States. And looking back and thinking deeply about what is American folk music, what American folk music is best represented in the world today in the world of metal. Well, so much of our folk music came from Scotland and Ireland, Spain or Mexico, and those hundreds of years ago, those traditions were already in place in the nations that these other bands have drawn their songwriting from. Looking just at purely American stuff, you want to know about Native American metal, which definitely exists and continues to grow stronger and stronger. But it kind of clicked that really the most American music of all, as best represented in metal in 2018, would have to be the blues and field music as brought to life in metal by the Swiss musician Zeal and Ardor. Very dark combination here of workhouse chants and modern-day, well-designed black metal. This is from the album Stranger Fruit. Thanks again for joining me on Roots of deep-rooted worldwide folk metal. Dive into that playlist at roots.bazillionpoints.com. Thank you very, very much for being here. Know your roots!
I come in the breath of the dead, bathing in my pauper blood, bare bone and covered in red, waiting undied even in the flood. And I came on a ship on fire, to the seas you call your home, climbed down from the highest spire, I disappear with the ocean foam. I collect all the things that I need, I collect all the things that I need, I collect all the things that I need. I came in the name of the dead, to bring my neck to the blade, come down where the tempest led. We got 7 different letters in the 7 row, they go wish inside over the day I think about a home and down You better run. You better run.
You just heard Ian Christie's Bloody Roots, Liquid Metal's hour-long crash course in headbanger history.